we had a question in the chat, and I believe it was answered already, but I obviously people watching on YouTube don't see the chats. Khaled asked if all these processes affect trowelite inclusions. Scott McGregor did jump in. He says he doesn't think that hurts trowelite or schreibersite. Did you have any comment there at all, Craig?
No problems at all. I have the only thing that can degrade trowelite, schreibersite I've never had a problem with. Trowelite, the only time is if you're doing electrolysis, again, later show. This is rust removal 101, home stuff for light rust. We're going to get much more in depth in how to take care of really nasty rust coming up. But no, trowelite from a treatment standpoint is fine. If you use too high of an amperage when you're stabilizing, it can degrade it and crumble. But outside of actually electric current, I have never had any issue. You can see there's a whole lot of trowelite and a whole lot of things I have here, and we don't have any problems with it.
Awesome. Oh, also, Chris Sanders had a question. He said, do any of these processes change for whole stone versus slices? Thinking about something like a Campo stone that hasn't been sliced yet.
So my suggestion with whole stones is if you're intending to leave them whole, leave them alone. The rust is protective. Now there are some, hang on, I'm going to step out of view for a minute, for example. So this is a Campo that's going to get treated. And it's going to get cleaned and stabilized. So you can see this is pretty significantly oxidized. If you can rub it and get chunks of iron off, flaking off, that would be one that you're going to want to do electrolysis on. These surface cleaning techniques aren't going to do you a lot of good in this case. This is a much more, I mean, I'm just going to show you, literally, you can just
we were looking at cosmetic stuff earlier. This right here is a structural problem.
Correct. Now, that said, I would not look at this stone and say, oh no, that's not a good stone, because I'll tell you, if I can squeeze through, this Campo looked exactly like this Campo just a couple months ago, and it got cleaned and then brief electrolysis, couple weeks. Again, it's a whole stone, so your stabilization process is going to be less intensive than a thin slice. That's because of surface area. When it's whole, the amount of surface area exposed to air is considerably less per square inch than a slice, which is very thin and exposed on all sides. So generally speaking, unless they look really bad, like for example, this one I would not do anything to. This is an Odessa. That rust is protective. This patina is lovely, and I wouldn't touch it. This one, this one I'm definitely going to take care of, and we'll get to that in another process. But in most cases, a natural patina on irons, for example, oh, this Hickman, yeah, it's rust, but it's beautiful. I would not touch this. The inside is gorgeous. Actually, this is probably going to need a little bit of treatment. I haven't stabilized it, so there's a little bit of rust, But again, I wouldn't touch the outside of this under any circumstances. If anything, it adds to the aesthetic value.
Craig, let me ask you something. I don't want to challenge you on this, but maybe you can explain it from a different way to help different viewers understand. Sure. You were saying that the rust on the outside of some is a protective rust versus rust against rust.
So I make my own terms. I'm right. No. Yes. So even when I'm talking about pieces, and you asked, this will answer two questions. You asked how to tell if it's something that needs more significant help, and it's the same answer for deciding if a whole piece is good to go. I will tell you that whole piece looks that way because it was dipped in acid and never done anything with. So it was cleaned and then left out in the weather, and now it looks like that. So it was bathed in chlorides, cleaned to the iron, and then left back out in the rain. So in fact, if you left that for 1,000 years, it would probably look much more similar to the Odessa, and then I'd say, yeah, you can leave it alone. But if you're going to have it in your house, you don't want chunks falling off and pieces falling apart. Yes, so part two, we're going to talk about a galvanic treatment, which is the next least invasive way to get rid of rust, but does a little better job long-term. It does require full refinishing. What I showed you here today was deliberately to avoid full refinishing, because refinishing is a whole nother process that's much more involved.
When you're talking about today does not require refinishing versus episode 2 will, a big part of that is the etching of it and the whole treatment of etching. So are we going to learn how to do the etching process later on with you?
Yes. Yes, I will teach you how to etch. I will teach you what I use to etch. We'll actually do it live, and I'll show you what it looks like. And then more importantly, and that's where, so I do use a lot of wash soda. If it's a new cut and I spray it down with any kind of chemicals, I will usually give it one run through with the Arm & Hammer just to let it soak in. This is just a base solution, or it's a basic powder that I put into solution. And just the base will help neutralize some of the surface acids. So when we're going to talk extensively about using wash soda in the next episode, this is going to be like your best friend. And then in the third episode, when we talk about electrolysis, this is going to be your electrolyte that's also going to be necessary to create the process that stabilizes the iron. So that's where this comes in. I didn't use it tonight because we don't really need it much tonight, but this is something you want to definitely keep in your arsenal. People will use baking soda. I'm gonna say this: baking soda is not the same, and that is sodium bicarbonate. It will work. It does not work as well, and I'm going to show you in absolutely glaring view the chemical reaction that happens on the next episode to show you the difference between sodium carbonate versus baking soda. One of them causes a huge color change and bubbly reaction, and the other is just nothing. So you're not really getting a chemical reaction. You want a chemical reaction because you want to neutralize that acid. So we're going to get into that in great detail in the next 2 shows. But yes, wash soda and distilled water, which I didn't use much here either, because when you're if you're just cleaning and you're not going to refinish, you don't want to expose it to water, and you definitely don't want to expose it to any more chemicals than you need to. So that's all coming up. Lots more goodies. So Sue, you asked if I could just show you some of the things that we use again. This is it right here. This is the magic. I just can't say enough about it. It does your work for you. But this is a rust converter. There are other types of rust converters. They all work. I've had better luck with this than any others. It happens to be the worst smelling, but that's okay. So well ventilated area for that one. Denatured alcohol, doesn't matter. This is just what our stores locally carry. I actually have a 55-gallon drum of methanol, which works fine as well. But most people aren't going to want a 55-gallon drum. So denatured alcohol for cleaning and for getting rid of coatings. If you don't like coatings, or you really want to get rid of water out of cracks deep down, lacquer thinner. Lacquer thinner is more volatile. It's going to, wow, my voice squeaked. It will evaporate much faster, but it does an amazing job of peeling anything that's on the outside of your meteorite off. And it does a great job of drying things quickly. It will dissolve your gloves. That's the only disadvantage. And this is a little more reactive with the etching acid, which we'll talk about in the next show. That's why I have both out here. But this is for cleaning. I'm sorry, this is for removing surfaces. This is for cleaning and drying. And I would recommend having both handy. You can buy much smaller. You can buy a couple ounces. You won't need a lot. And then CLR, my next best friend for after you etch. Or if you have a dull iron, this will help clean that up nice and quick.
Wow.
Other than that,
fantastic information, buddy. I really appreciate you sharing it all with us. We see your logo behind you, Minnesota Meteorites. Maybe you could just take 30 seconds or a minute or so and tell us a little bit about Minnesota Meteorites. I know you mentioned it a few times today, so I do want to put a thumbnail on it as well. You do a lot of outreach to schools and a lot of education of kids. It's something
correct,
near and dear to the channel.
Yeah, I one of my favorite things to do, and my wife is kind enough to accompany me many times. So yeah, we actually, there's a STEM organization here in the Twin Cities, and they rotate through sites, 5th and 6th graders that will be run all year long. Sorry, I just sprayed more chemical. We'll show you. My wife is covering her nose.
Oh, it's so stinky.
Anyway, yes, we do lots of outreach. I do everything from K-12 up to postdoc, graduate students. I suppose that's redundant. Professional organizations, the more we can spread the word, the better. And I should tell you, I wish I had it out here. This is just a funny story. We went and with a STEM organization, I always have a do not touch table. I really try to bring a good representative sample that kids will move in all over. And that includes some pallasites. In this case, I had my collection Immolac slice. And it was on the do not touch table, which I stand religiously at. Kids can touch everything else except that table. And I was talking to a little girl, and all of a sudden I heard crunch. And this little boy goes, "Oh, she broke it." And I looked, and the girl was doing chest compressions on my slice that broke into 3 pieces. And I mean completely broke into 3 pieces. So outreach is fun. It's a little bit frustrating, but I can't tell you how many kids have come up to me afterwards and said, "Ooh, I'm going to be an astronaut, or I'm going to be a scientist." You can't ask for more than that. So,
That's fantastic.
and I did fix the slice. I wish I had it here because you never know what ever broke. Which is another episode we can talk about meteorite repair, but that'll come after the rust removal.
Topher, we have a lot of people that watch our videos, but they don't subscribe. So please subscribe.
Oh yeah,
because we're trying to hit 20,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and we're just about at 19,000.
Yeah, we hit 19,000 today, so we're trying to get to 20 by the end of the year. So it would help us out. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, no problem.
We have lots of comments from everybody telling you what a great presentation it was. Thank you. Thanking you very much.
Well, that's awesome. I was just going to show you guys. I only sprayed it a second ago, but look, the difference is this stuff is magic. So
It smells so
it
bad.
smells terrible, but it really is amazing
Oh,
stuff.
it's bad.
Honestly, when I first saw that thing on the table, I thought it was a fender from an old car or something.
Yeah.
Something.
Pat, I wish I could show you some of the condition of things that I get in here. I got one from Roberto Vargas. I should have brought it out. It's a little Brenham. Oh my God, it was in 4 pieces, a big thick slice, not a piece of olive bean left in it. And it's going to go back to him this week, good as new. So it's crazy some of the stuff we get. But honestly, cutting's great, finishing's great, etching's great. There is nothing like putting a piece back together and really making it like you'd never know it. Like you never know it broke. That's my favorite thing in the world to do. So it's fun.
You need to realize that these processes do take time, especially when we get into like part 2 and 3.
Yeah, I did say my backlog was like 3 years on stabilizations.
Wow.
And that, like,
I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. I mean, I make exceptions certainly, and there are priorities. There are some pieces that can't, they have to go in right away. So, but that's part of the wait time built in is that, if I get a pallasite that's on the brink of falling into 17 pieces, that's going to take priority over an iron that's got rust in the cracks, kind of a thing. But the wait time is incredible because it's a long process.
I'd like to open it up to our entire crew who's been extremely well, I mean, not really patient necessarily because it was very entertaining and educational, but it's hard to be on mute for an hour, and I understand that. So if anyone wants to, everyone's unmuted, but if you guys want to ask any questions directly, it's Craig's time. He'll have to tell you to shut up because we have him on camera now.
I'm good. Ask away. Not all at once, though.
Make sure it comes electronically, and Topher can call on you guys.
Oh no, I'm done for the day. Anyone who wants to ask can just ask.
Yeah, we're off
question.
camera now. Just ask away, whatever you want.
I do have a question. Now, that rust remover that you have, would that affect pallasites in terms of the crystals at all, or is that safe for those?
It is my favorite tool for pallasites because it will penetrate and really take care of the rust. I'm actually playing. Is this Steve?
I'm sorry.
No, that's Dave Pinsky.
That's David.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was Steve Brittingham. Your voice sounds very similar. So I'm actually experimenting right now with Admire that isn't even stabilized, that I just use and let thoroughly soak in this, finish it, etch it, give it one more wipe down with the rust remover and seal it because you can seal over it. And so far, It's been as good as stabilized. I do not see any change in, I use that on almost any ferrous piece of meteorite that comes through my shop. And I have no problems at all, including the Fukang that I'm still selling, which if any of you saw the crystals on that, probably the most pristine olivine I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And doesn't affect it at all. Olivine is really, it's really non-reactive. It's stable. It's not the inert. It really doesn't react with much, except for hammers and things. So and heat.
Yeah, John Humphreys and heat.
Yeah, Humphreys and heat. That's funny when you. That's exactly what I was thinking when I said that.
Humphreys and heat. Well, and then if that's the case, if you're going to dry a palisite, does that mean you can't put it in the oven?
No, you can. You just want to keep it below 180.
Okay.
So for instance, I will often, like irons, I'll throw in, turn it on to 170, which is as low as mine goes. And it gets hotter than that at first, but irons really don't, they'll tolerate, you can go up to 300 degrees on an iron without any problem. But with pallisites, I don't let that happen. So you make sure you preheat it to your 150 to 170, depending on what kind of oven you have. Once it's preheated, put it in, let it sit, and let it dry off. Even if you leave the rust, so again, this is going to be stinky. So if you leave the rust remover on it in the oven, your kitchen's not going to smell great, and your wife is going to be very unhappy with
Don't do it.
But you can do that. I would say when you take it out of the oven, wipe it off good with either lacquer thinner or alcohol, just to it's gummy stuff. It's fairly dilute, but it's gummy once you get most of the moisture out of it. So I would still wipe it off with a good alcohol or lacquer thinner just to get the excess stuff off the top. Let it dry, seal it up, and you should be in good shape. The only issue with pallisites is, so pallisites have a lot of glue, a lot of Opticon in them. All pallisites. Nothing I love more than somebody who sends me well, in one case, a Brenham. I don't want any glue. I'm like, okay, take your Brenham back. That doesn't happen. You won't see it, but you absolutely, when you're cutting these things, there are lots of gaps and cracks. And this thing called Opticon, which is sort of a pain in the butt to use in multi-steps, does an amazing job of penetrating deep. And the Opticon, they call it because it's a gem fracture healer. So it absorbs deep, and when it's hardened, it removes the cracks. And so I'll use it for not only pallisites, but I'll go back and use it on things like NWA 16128, the Dunite. And
There you go. Thanks a lot.
Sorry, am I?
No, we just our post person just came and picked up packages. Sorry about that.
No problem. I just didn't want to, I wasn't sure if somebody was asking a question. Anyway, pallisites, no problem. If there's enough rust that it's actually causing things to lift up around the edges of the olivine, you're going to need to have it treated. It will never look smooth again. So you can still do that and get rid of the rust, seal it up, and it will be fine, but it'll never look as good. You really need to have that refilled and fixed up.
Right.
Sorry, that was a long walk for a short beer.
And I'm glad to hear that you personally have put back together pallisites, because I did that and wondered, is that like wrong to do with meteorites? But I wanted that palisite slice.
It's in the corner. I'm gonna just have my wife run and get the piece that the little girl was doing chest compressions on. Yeah, in the corner case. I love it. You can do it with lunar, like, people don't know this because it's not something we share, but many things break when you're cutting them. Some have natural cracks, most have natural cracks, and even with wire, which is sort of a minimally jarring cutting process, if there's a crack, there's a crack. And so we'll often have lunars and other things break, certainly pallisites. We just repair them. You can't tell. I actually had a piece that broke into 7 pieces, and it was a pretty significant break, but all the pieces fit as long as there's nothing missing, and it fit tight, and glue it up and seal it, the one on your left hand. And people will never, the trick is you have to refinish it. You have to actually grind it smooth again after you fix things. And that's what makes it work. But this is the piece that was broken into 3. I would defy anyone
Oh, wow.
to tell me
Highlight
where that cracked.
And what glue do you use for that, Craig?
We're very high tech. Super glue. Super glue is so I use super glue to initially hold things in place, and then I Opticon them. Opticon is a much stronger penetrating thing, but it also requires filling in missing pieces, and that sometimes includes iron. Certainly replacing crystals. So I'll tell you, I will let you know that the crack is actually right in the middle of this, and there's just little bubbles there that I still have to fill in, and I haven't finished. But the rest of it you can't tell. This was a natural dark spot. This side is polished, and you still can't tell there was ever a break there. So it comes. There's a lot replaced. There's a lot replaced. But as long as you're using crystals from the same type of meteorite, and you're using iron from the same meteorite, and you can put them back together pretty well. It takes some time, but I mean this was, well, it was 3 pieces. It was much smaller. It was like over there, and this was broken in half. And so, now I have a gorgeous, beautiful.
Say that Craig does a good job with fixing broken meteorites, because I don't even remember which one it was that I bought from him. It's like he showed a photo. I said, I'll take it. And then like a few hours later, it's like it broke. And he's like, and I'm like, okay, can you fix it? And he's like, yeah, you'll never know. I'm like, okay. And I got it, and I couldn't tell where it was broken. The other thing was you talk about the oven, but what about a food dehydrator? We've used that before. We use that in Meteorite Mansion because you're working on big stuff. Most of our stuff might be little stuff. So,
Any heat source, hot plate, dehydrator. Dehydrator is probably ideal because you're getting more air movement. Yeah, and you can leave it in for a long time without using so much energy. It's painful. Yeah.
Okay, so
absolutely.
On today's topic, I've got a Dronino shrapnel kind of piece, so it's really kind of rough and stuff. It's fine for the most part. It's dulled down. The color is dulled. It's darker. There's like only a couple of spots where it's like a little rusty, but what can I do to bring the color back up? Because I don't think it's been sealed or anything.
I get really squeamish about Dronino because I've had, especially the jagged ones. CLR, I would just try it in a small spot and see if that just brightens it right up for you. If it does, then I would I don't know that I'd soak it in it per se, but spray it on with a spray bottle and then quick clean it off as soon as it brightens up. That should do it. A lot of irons will age, they mellow. And so like, even if I'm cleaning Campos, when they first come out, they're shiny, and which is not a good look. But if you give them 2 weeks, even sealed, they will mellow and they will get darker. So I'm not sure that there's a way to permanently prevent it. And I also started doing that with Gebel Camille, where I'm not the stuff that has any of the nice turtleback crust on it, but some of the other shrapnel pieces I'll clean to a shine, and they really look spectacular. But the shine will, again, 2 to 4 weeks later, you're going to find that it just mellows. It gets dark. It's sort of like when you paint cabinets. It looks great, one color, but somebody says, no, it's a little light. Well, give it a couple weeks, and they mellow. And that's the same with iron. I think it's just sort of a mild oxidative reaction. But so if you do clean it, I would do it cautiously because Dronino is notoriously bad. But then I would probably dry it good and maybe seal it up or desiccate it. I think that's the only way you're going to keep it shiny.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sue?
I have a quick question, and Pat's posting some links to these products in the chat. I'm also adding them to our Knowledge Bullet Crew suggested products. I think that we've grabbed most of them. However, there's a few I have a question about. For the denatured alcohol, does it matter if it's 190 proof versus 200 proof? Is that just not that important, or?
No, so the difference is water content. I'm even 70% isopropyl alcohol because it's generally manufactured using sterile water. So it's pretty safe. And realistically, if you buy a can of the denatured alcohol, I think this is 199 proof or something like that. You leave it out in the garage for a month or two in the summer, especially, and it's probably only going to be 90%. So 180 proof, and it still works fine. I just would avoid anything, less than 70% or 140 proof. I wouldn't mess with, or if it has any other cleaning agents in it. A lot of alcohol has hydrogen peroxide. That is an oxidation mechanism. I mean, that is it's an accelerant, basically, for oxidation. So definitely make sure it's only alcohol. But from that standpoint, as long as it's 70% or greater, I don't get real excited about it.
Okay. And then the only two that I don't have links for yet, and I know someone actually specifically asked about it. There was a finish in an aerosol can. Is that the Rust-Oleum? And can you kind of just remind us what that is? And then just also just show us that thinner one more time.
So this is the least expensive. It's a Rust-Oleum lacquer. You can, they have a chair. It's fine for wood. If you want to do your cabinets, you can use it. If you want to do meteorites, you can use it. This is about $7 a can, and it works great. This is, it was something that is made for aluminum wheels. It's a little more durable, and also I like the spray tip because the spray tip on this is very wide. It's a nice fan. So when you're doing big meteorites, it's a nice even coating like you're going to do your car. But in terms of the actual, effectiveness, this was $12, $13. This is $6. This one works just as good as this one. This one is just a little easier to use on big pieces for me. This works just fine for anything else. And I actually use this on 90% of the stuff I do. This stuff I use on the big pieces.
Okay. And then one of the green is just called Rust-Oleum lacquer. What is the name of the one that you have in your hand? Okay, Rust-Oleum wheel. Okay, great. Thank you.
And I do have this, I think I put all this on your supply list. Lacquer thinner, so one of the things a lot of people really mix up is lacquer thinner and paint thinner. Paint thinner is oil. Paint thinner mixes, you use it to thin varnishes and paints. It will not remove things. It will not take paint off effectively. Lacquer thinner is what you really want. So I would make sure that if people hear thinner and they think, oh, it's paint thinner, it's lacquer thinner. Well, lacquer is paint, and it should totally different products. So I would just say make sure lacquer thinner, and any brand works just fine, but lacquer thinner is what you want.
Yeah, lacquer thinner is acetone. So
Yeah,
if you buy
Yep.
pure acetone, that's essentially the same thing.
Yeah. And acetone works fine too. Lacquer thinner is actually a little better at taking paint. It's a little faster, not better. That's why I use it. But yes, acetone works fine.
Yeah. Fantastic information, Craig. I really appreciate you sharing your industry secrets with us. And it's coming from a place, and we're offering from a place of, we are custodians of these meteorites while they're in our care, and it's our responsibility. If we're going to be a proud meteorite collector, we should keep an eye on them, and when they need first aid, render that first aid. So thank you very much for your commitment to helping us educate ourselves. Episode 1 is in the bag. We got 2 and 3 more to go, so look forward to it.
Thanks, everybody.